Oftentimes, people ask me, when am I going to stop making videos about racism, bigotry, and injustice? They also ask me, when are you going to stop making videos about police brutality, murdering, and violating the rights of black people? Well, when they stop doing it, then I'll stop making these types of videos. Until then, these type of videos are going to be made. Today I'm covering a story, I'm quite sure you've all seen it. Prison guards, they deliberately and systematically murdered a black inmate. And now they're not going to be charged or arrested. See, these guards, these police officers, and people who are rogue, of course, they'll say it's one bad apple. They feel heightened and emboldened because they're part of the MAGA movement and also part of the KKK and everything else. And since they know that they got somebody that's going to have their back, so they're going to get away with all kind of stuff. But Judgment Day does come. Tyrone Bowman Live, welcome to the program. This video is courtesy of Indisputable with Dr. Richey. Check out this video, listen to this story, and I think it's self-explanatory.
Prison guards, you've seen it, caught fatally beating a black male. They avoid arrest. I'm going to remind you of what you have likely already seen. It is horrific. As you can see, the individual they are attacking has absolutely no way of defending himself, nor is he an aggressor. There are some making claim about the lack of audio. Lack of audio does not matter. The reason why there's a lack of audio is because the officers did not turn on their recording devices. That is called standby mode. What you're looking at is an automatic standby mode of recording. It is only because of that standby mode we have the video of this beating, this brutal assault, this murder. The New York prison officers
Good evening, Isabel.
who are shown ruthlessly beating to death an incarcerated 43-year-old Robert Brooks, who was handcuffed and strapped face down on a gurney earlier this month, have not been arrested more than 2 weeks after the fatal incident. The video footage of Robert Brooks being fatally beaten was made public on Friday by the New York Attorney General's office nearly 3 weeks after the incident at the Mercy Correctional Facility on December 10th. The New York Times reported that 12 people involved, 12, are, quote, facing termination. But as of Friday, Sergeants Michael Mashaw and Glenn Trombley, officers Matthew Gallagher, Nicholas Anzalone, David Kingsley, Robert Kessler, Michael Fisher, Christopher Walrath, Michael Along, Shia Scoff, and David Walters, along with the nurse, Kyle Danshaw, have not only remained gainfully employed, but also free of any criminal charges for their alleged actions. All of the prison officers involved are white men. Let me say that again. All of the prison officers involved are white men. It was not immediately clear why the beating took place. The New York Times offered it.
Let me just interject this here before I continue with this video. This is under Mayor Eric Adams' watch. These are his police officers. He was a police officer for 30 years before becoming a politician. And he knows full well exactly what happened, when it happened, and how it happened. Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something. You might not like this, but it really doesn't matter. I did 10 years in state penitentiary. I know how these cops are. I've seen racism up close and personal every single day. I've seen people's rights violated. I've seen them lie, fabricate, destroy evidence. From the administration, they all in concert together, they all work together. The women are just as evil as the men. Don't you even think for one moment that there's not a massive cover up going on here. And many times, those of you who have not been affected by racism, you don't care because those are your friends, your uncles, and your nephews that are cops. And they don't tell you about the dirty, rotten things they do every day. And it is clearly evident just from this small piece of video what these people did. And they need to be arrested and charged and locked up.
Explanation for why the suspects were not immediately fired and reported that the state's police union expressed doubt about the footage.
They don't give a damn
unless
about
those
them.
accused of participating in the attack are criminally charged. Arbitration and union rules can make it difficult to fire them, which is insane. The union that represents corrections employees said in a statement that it would fulfill its obligation, quote, to represent all of its members, but it strongly condemned
White members.
what the 14 are accused of doing. The union, the New York State Correctional Officers and Police Benevolent Association, noted in the statement that members of its executive board had seen footage of a small portion of the attack. Quote, what we witnessed is incomprehensible, to say the least, and is certainly not reflective of the great work that the vast majority of our membership conducts every day. The union said, adding, quote, we cannot and will not condone this behavior. I'm going to get into a statement from the governor in just a moment, but I want to bring your attention to some of the irony here and the nuance and representation as it relates to police unions. The union is saying they're going to fulfill their obligation and represent these individuals who clearly are committing a murder. In the same voice, they're saying what they are witnessing by way of watching the video, what they witnessed was incomprehensible. But they're still going to fulfill their obligation. Their obligation has nothing to do with justice, does it? The obligation has nothing to do with being an advocate for the citizens of this nation or elsewhere. Their obligation is to do what the money tells them to do. These are membership dues paid into an organization that then says we're going to do A, B, and C for you. That's what it's a racket. It's what it is. You have 3 weeks. It's done, videos released in 3 weeks. Now we still have no arrest. Possibly they will be terminated. Everyone involved was a white male. They murdered a man. This should be dealt with swiftly, right? Let's go to the governor. Put her full mask. The New York governor said she was, quote, outraged and horrified and called Brooks' death, quote, senseless. The governor also said she, quote, ordered a full investigation and ordered the Department of Corrections and Community.
Didn't realize that Indeed was going to be such a great place to find great candidates for the hospital.
I don't care about this crap. Do what y'all gotta do, but this right here is what I do.
They murdered a man. This should be dealt with swiftly, right? Let's go to the governor. Put her full mask. The New York governor said she was, quote, outraged and horrified, and called Brooks' death, quote, senseless. The governor also said she, quote, ordered a full investigation and ordered the Department of Corrections and Community Supervision to begin the termination process. They murdered a defenseless black male who has constitutional rights. It is still illegal to commit murder. It is still illegal to hold someone in positions that create harm, regardless of their position in the jail or the prison, and regardless of if you are a corrections officer or not. However, it seems as if these rules get blurred. Even the powers that be, who clearly define what we've just seen the exact same way as we would define it, are hard-pressed a solution that is swift. This is America. Jackson, obviously, on the wheels of justice should turn much faster than it's turning, but this is simply indicative and a permeation of the system at large. What say you?
There's a lot of different ways to look at this in terms of, on the one hand, you have systemic racism, but also I think topic of discussion for any time you see this is that the system itself is not centered on rehabilitation. It just isn't. And one of the biggest reasons why it's so hard to get any type of real police reform is because the culture is about punishment. The culture is about removing people from society. But, with our drug laws and the drug war that we've had and just targeting of various communities, specifically black and brown communities, these are people who are supposed to be in this system. They're supposed to be in prison. That's why when you talk about things like, how black communities are still impoverished and there's not a lot of opportunities, there's not a lot of jobs, people will just brush it off and say, well, that's because y'all ain't got no responsibility. All you got to do is get your act together and these things won't happen to you. And, racists don't like being called racist because in their worldview, this is just what it is. Black people really ain't about nothing, so that's why they ain't got nothing. That's why every time they try to rise up, they get shut down because that's just where they're supposed to be. But ultimately, the culture needs to change because if we're not focused on rehabilitating people, really get into the root cause of what's going on with them, because most people in prison aren't like, mass murderers or mass sexual assaulters. Obviously, those people are there, but a lot of them are just impoverished. Maybe they stole things, had developed a lifestyle of robbery. Perhaps they're drug addicts in various ways. Maybe they sold drugs. That's the majority of people who are in prison, people that you can work with. They're not so far gone that it's like, oh, no, we got to lock them up forever. But unless the culture changes more towards rehabilitation and we start thinking about how much cheaper it would be to not house so many people in the prison system, then this just won't change, because as long as it's centered on punishment, authority has to establish itself. That's why it's like, oh, we're going to terminate them even though they killed this man, because if they start to go another direction, the whole system's going to change. This is just, again, a reflection of our focus on punishment.
Yeah, we will bring updates as they develop. We are looking forward to updating the story when they are officially charged.
Welcome, Amazon business owners, and
Thank you, Dr. Richey and Indisputable. I'll close by saying this. What do you think would have happened 3 weeks ago if the situation was reversed? What do you think would have happened if 14 black police officers murdered a white man? Think about it. Never surrender. Never quit.